So, hi everyone, I'm Joy Vernon, and this is the Greater Seattle Astrology Tarot Reiki meetup. And today we've got an astrology topic. In fact, this is a really interesting one because it's very fun and it's very easy, but it is really profound. It can profoundly elevate your capacity for reading for other people, for even reading your own chart and understanding your own chart. So we are looking at how to find the story in the astrological chart. So I'm going to jump right in and share my screen and we'll get going. Okay, so here we are, how to find the story in the astrological chart. And today is Saturday, November 15th, and it's probably, I don't know what time it is right now, but it's a little past 9:30. Um, and so the agenda, this is what we're going to be covering. I'm going to tell a little bit about my story and how this kind of naturally, this technique or this approach to interpreting a chart kind of evolved very naturally for me, and I'll tell that story. I'm going to give you the party metaphor. If there's always like that. If I learn just one thing in this presentation, I'll be happy. I think the party metaphor might be that thing because it's really easy to do. Then we'll talk about a play full of characters. We're going to look at the planets as characters and the aspects as interactions. Then I'll talk to you about how to tell the story, and then we'll put it to work looking at some sample charts. So here's my story, and just in terms of how I kind of arrived at being able to do this. Back when I first started learning astrology, I took a class. I'm not going to tell you who it was, but a lot of you know that I know Chris Brennan, so I will say that it wasn't Chris Brennan, it was somebody else. But I'm not going to say who it was. So in one session, the instructor used my chart as the example. He was looking at the moon. We were talking about moon placements, I think, and he kept saying, "You are this, you are that." Well, you can't say that because one part of somebody's chart is not ever going to describe them. But on top of that, my moon is square to my sun. My sun is conjunct Saturn, so the moon is square Saturn. There's a Just looking at my moon by itself tells you nothing about me. And so those two basic parts don't align. And and it really sounded awkward and not relevant at all. And on top of that, I was kind of upset because I thought at the very least talk about how my moon square my sun, what that means at the very least. And I already knew that this part of me, my moon, I understood what that meant for me, but it really brought home for me how it was only by integrating those contradictory elements that I could even begin to arrive or approach at what constitutes me. So later on, and I am not good with dates. I do not remember when any of these things happen. I kind of think this professional astrology reading might have been in 2010, but I'm not sure. That astrology, and he was, I also won't say who it was, although he was very, very good. But he described me as having two sides. One's, and again, not Chris Brennan. The astrologer described me as having two sides, one side that was excited and eager, my Aries sun, and one that was shy and reclusive, my Cancer moon. He just described it almost as sisters or something like that. And so that made a lot of sense to me, and I appreciated that interpretation. But he still got some things wrong because he left out that Saturn conjunct my sun. At least it seemed like he wasn't addressing it. He seemed to see a lightness and an ease in my chart that I just don't have. And but I did appreciate his interpretation because I had come up with some similar ideas, not quite from the same perspective that he was looking at, but I had found some similar ideas during my own work with my chart. In the end, even after this like really good astrologer and a really like thorough natal chart reading, like a 2 hour reading, I still felt like my own work with my chart had gone deeper and come closer to the true me. And for these illustrations, this this one here, this illustration is like something about the oh, I forgot. The truth. I've got all the attributions, the art attributions at the end. It's Eleanor Brick something. And this was about the moon not telling the truth or lies that the moon makes or something like that. And then this is also by the same artist, and it is obviously sunny and bright, and it just made sense. It's like, oh yeah, this is me during a moon phase, and this is me during a sun phase, but they're in constant interaction. I like the fact that there was even a fountain in both. And this, the fountain was really like lots of spray and lots of energy. And the statue is so big in this moon-like imagination. And in this bright light of day, the statue is very small. The fountain isn't, it's a pool, not a fountain, and it's just very much more like everyday realistic. It's not all fantasy oriented. So I thought those two really did express the essence of the moon and the essence of the sun, at least for me. But it's not about one each. It's about how those two interact with each other. And so when I had gotten that reading, I already knew my chart pretty well. And again, I don't remember these things. I'd probably been working with it for a year or two. For whatever reason, maybe due to my background as a stage director, which I started directing when I was in college. I directed a scene from Romeo and Juliet, which we're going to be doing. I directed a scene from Romeo and Juliet when I was in high school. I had a lot of interest in theater from a young age. Um, and went on to be a stage director in community theater in Fort Collins, Colorado, but to get education in it as well. Maybe because of the interesting symmetry in my chart, which is shown there on the screen, it just never occurred to me to try to understand my chart one point at a time. Everything was things interacting, everything was scenes. All of these different things were coming together and interacting with each other. It's just what I saw the very first time I pulled this, which the first chart I ever pulled was off of Alab, and it has like a little brief summary of each thing, but that was not very interesting to me. I just wanted to look at the chart itself, explore those lines, figure out, what those planets were all talking about. Um, and so that's just how I perceived it. So, ready to find your story? Let's go. So, the first thing you need is your chart. And you can print your chart for free at AstroDienst, which is what I usually use. That's astro.com, astro-seek or alab. And so all of those are good. I like astro.com's charts the best. I think they're the easiest to read and the nicest to look at. Um, and they don't add too much stuff, which is the next thing that I'm going to talk about. Make sure it's clear and easy to read. And so you can see over on the left here, it gets the green check mark. These are both, I actually just found something like this on the internet. I was just looking for a chart that looked complicated and hard to understand. And it's actually the chart for the millennium for like January 1st, 2000 at 12:01 a.m. or something like that. Um, and so, but at any rate, I had to re-put the re put the data into AstroSeek, and this is what it looks like from the regular AstroSeek natal chart. But I took away a number of things, Lilith in the vertex, and the Lot of Fortune and took away like, and I only use the major aspects plus the quincunx are the only ones I use. And so then I use whatever Astro naturally puts in because their minor aspects are so faint and dotted lines, and it's really easy to ignore them if you want to, and to look at them if you want to. And then this is the other way that charts look, was when you add everything and put in all the aspects to everything. And it's just a mess. It's a hot mess. And I would have clients come in back when I was in Denver and bring their chart with them and throw this down and say, tell me what this means. I'm like, that's a hot mess. You can't look at that. You've got to keep it simple. You've got to keep it clear. And I'm not saying that I take a simple, easy approach to things or that minor aspects aren't important. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that asteroids are not important. You can do amazing readings with those, but you want to start with the basics. And so this is not a good chart to hand to somebody that's brand new, whereas this is a really good chart to hand to someone that's brand new and makes it much easier for them to understand what's going on. As to house system, I don't care. I use Coke, and my charts were pulled in Coke because that was what Astro was set to, the default. But I don't care about the house system. Like I said, it's important to keep it simple to start. So next thing, what makes a story? And this is a common theme that I've explored for many, many years due to being in theater, but also due to being a tarot reader and wanting to find that story in the cards. And so I was doing a presentation one time for a talk. I was preparing a presentation and I wanted to talk about finding the story in the cards. And I was trying to like, what are the how can we describe story? Like, what are the parts of a story? And I'm like, and I actually put my own brain to it for a while trying to figure it out. And then it's like, seriously, somebody's got to have done this before me. And so then it's like, oh, wait, yeah, Aristotle did it. And so I grabbed my copy of the Poetics and opened it up, and he has 6 parts of drama. And they are plot, character, diction, thought, spectacle, and song. And I do have a blog post on my blog where I go into all of these and talk about how they might apply to a tarot reading. Again, I'm talking a little bit more about a tarot reading, but it should be pretty much the same for an astrology consultation um, or delineation. And then he goes on to say that character and plot, which are basically the actions that happen, are the most important, and that choices determine a person's innate character. The actions they take, the actions they choose to take are what determines the person's innate character. And so a person can say everything right and always make bad choices, and those choices are what really is revealing of their character. So, how does this apply to the chart? Those planets are the characters, and the aspects are how those characters interact. These interactions explore how the character responds to certain situations and ultimately allude to the choice that they made. So here's a party metaphor. And like I said, this is going to be one of those things you're like, okay, Joy, if this is the only thing I get, this is fun. I'll use it. Thank you. Um, Hopefully you think that. So the party metaphor, the ascendant, and I wanted a way to open up a reading with my clients that was fun, that started off with story and with using my imagination and didn't just for a long time. Seriously, there was another astrologer I knew, and I often worked at I often worked at psychic fairs with him, and I would listen to him, and he always had that kind of soft My boyfriend calls it a storyteller voice. He always had this soft voice, and he'd say, "You are a Taurus. Taurus means this, and you're like this." And he would explain Taurus to someone. Like nobody needs their sun sign explained to them. Everybody knows their sun sign. And so I got in the habit of like rebelling against that by saying, okay, you're a Taurus, but you know more about that than I do. And so then I was like, okay, really, I shouldn't start my readings off by saying, I don't know. I need to find a better way to start my readings off. The other thing that I noticed is that going in that typical order of Sun, Moon, and Ascendant didn't really work for me. In the other order, which was that the Ascendant is the most specific due to being based on time and the most detailed about a person, the Moon is the second most detailed thing, being, happening within about a 12 to 13-hour period. And the sun is still the core identity, but is a little bit more generic. I totally understand the reasoning for that, and I totally get that. And it still didn't quite work for me. I really did find that that sun sign was really important to people and really made a lot of explained a lot of things. And again, this is from my own understanding. I never related to being an Aries, but when I discovered my moon in Cancer, it made sense. And then I could see how I was Aries-like and how I was Cancer-like. And those two things started to meld for me. So I came up with this. And the ascendant, it's layers, how people get to know you. The ascendant is the first layer they see. Then the sun, the core identity, which you're willing to share with others, that's the second layer. And then the moon, which is more emotional and more private, that's the third layer that they see. So the ascendant, the party metaphor is that the ascendant is when you first enter the party. How do you show up to the party? What are you wearing? What do you do the second you walk in the door? That kind of thing. Why did you even go to the party in the first place? That's the ascendant. The sun is at the height of the party, most of your interactions with people throughout the party, and some people like take the throne. A Leo sun might take the throne and people will come to them. And uh, uh, an Aries, that's me. I'll come and like say hi to a few people and leave really fast, unless I can move into the Cancer part. Because the moon is later in the party, after you found one person you want to get to know better, someone you feel comfortable with and can open up to. I go very quickly from that Aries sun, I will go very quickly into the moon expression. And if I can't see anybody that I want to get to know or talk to, I probably will leave, but there could be other reasons. So if you ever invite me to a party and I leave early, it's not because I didn't want to get it to know anybody. It could be many reasons. Um, so somebody you feel comfortable with and can open up to. Using the party metaphor introduces that Sun Moon Ascendant in a fun and relatable way while starting the reading with a focus on finding the person's story and how they navigate the world around them. And so here's another quick example. A recent reading that I did using this technique is that somebody had a Taurus rising, and it starts you using your imagination right now. You haven't spent any time with the person yet. You're just starting the reading. You haven't even, I don't look at charts ahead of time, except for maybe I pull the chart ahead of time. So as long as it takes me to plug it into the app to Astro and pull it up and make sure things look right, that I entered the data correctly, I might spend 2 or 3 minutes on it. So I'm really coming in very fresh with a chart. But doing this technique gets your imagination going right away. And so I see that Taurus ascendant and I'm just using my imagination. It's like if Taurus ascendant, how do they show up at the party? What does Taurus like? Fine food. They like luxury things. And I was like, you always show up at the party with an expensive bottle of wine to give to the hostess. And the person was just like, oh my God, She's like, I do. And she started defending her choice for buying expensive wine. She's like, it's nice to have expensive wine. And I was like, it's okay. I'm not judging you. I just used my imagination, and that's what I came up with. The more you use your imagination, the more you open up your intuition. And the more you open up your intuition, the better your reading will be. So, going on. So here's our first example of where we can participate. And so we've got a chart here, and we're going to do an example of this party metaphor. So the ascendant is Capricorn. So this is how the person shows up at the party. Kind of what do they look like when they arrive? What's their motivation for going to the party? What's the first thing they do as they step through the door? Capricorn. Sun, Gemini. How does this so the ascendant is right here in Capricorn, the sun is over here in Gemini. How does a person spend most of their time at parties? What are they doing? How are they engaging with people during the party? And then the moon, which is here up in Scorpio, when this person gets comfortable at a party, how do they behave? And then, of course, we can, once we cover those three, we can start to add additional planets and points to round out the story. So, who wants to start? And so the first question is Capricorn Ascendant, how does this person arrive at the party?
So I think Capricorn ascendants are majorly pretty mature, disciplined, and that's one of the takeaways if I look at the ascendant sign.
Okay, good,
Um,
good. Arrive on time with plans the day after, somebody says.
exactly.
Okay, let me share this chart again. And again, this is not necessarily about um this is not something we can prove. It's just like nowhere in this person's bio does it talk about parties. We have no way of knowing this is right, and therefore it encourages us to like just play with it. What's your imagination say? Anyone want to take a stab? Okay, here we've got another one. Oh, they can look wise. They can also look old or mature enough. Not 100% true. Other things that need to be looked at. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, oh, okay. They might want to know who else is there and might ask right at the beginning. And so some other things that occurred to me is this person might go to parties as part of their job because Capricorn is professional, right? So they might go to parties as part of their job or intending to make job connections and job contacts. So then we go to the sun over there in Gemini. And so what does that sun in Gemini represent? And this is going to be how they spend the majority of their time at the party. What's their style social butterfly, absolutely. They are talking to everybody. Very talkative. Oh, yeah, definitely talkative. Chatty, open-minded conversations, definitely. Chatting, networking. Yeah, that's an easy one, isn't it? Because Geminis are good at parties. Capricorn's not necessarily. Getting the scoop will be good at finding interesting subjects to chat about. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's easy because Geminis, we love Geminis at a party. And so then we go to the moon. Oh, sharing knowledge and asking questions. Very good, very good. Now we go to the moon, which is in Scorpio up here. And when the person gets comfortable at the party, then how do they behave? Moon and Scorpio. They go deep, absolutely. Deep conversations about real life struggles. Yep, deep conversations. Yeah, definitely. Now let's add some layers. They've got Moon tightly conjunct Jupiter. But they don't share much. Yeah, that is an interesting thing. We're gonna consider that, Emmy, and come back to that one. Because Moon and Scorpio, Scorpio is definitely very private. But we've got Moon conjunct Jupiter, and we also have Moon and Jupiter conjunct the midheaven. So let's explore how those things are going to start to evolve this expression. Make fun of their own experiences. Nice interpretation. I like that. I like that. Because Jupiter is jovial, he has fun. And so he's not going to take himself too seriously, which could be a Scorpio shadow side, maybe. Any kind of Mars ruled sign, right?
Full of wisdom and knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. With the moon conjunct Jupiter, they're going to share wisdom and knowledge. They might start teaching at the party. They're like
Mm.
they find somebody that wants to learn what they have to know, and they're like, come here, let me tell you all that I know about this." Might be well known for this side of their personality, yeah, because it's on the midheaven. So they might be known for this uh, part of their personality. Um, so maybe this person is a comic and they develop material based on their interactions with others and are able to connect with lots of different people perspectives. Really nice. That's not who this person is, but I love that interpretation. A strong Gemini presence and a Mars ruled sign for the moon. Mars and Gemini work together to make comics, and so that is Mars and Mercury work together to make comics. So I like that. Um, but are able to connect with lots of different people and different perspectives, 100%. That's definitely true of this person without a doubt. And I'm not going to tell you who it is because we're going to look at this chart some more later. So you can just wait with bated breath until we come back to this chart. But yeah, you're getting really a lot of really interesting things, almost a chameleon. I like that interpretation, almost a chameleon. And Emmy, what's really interesting here is that you said, what did you say? Um, oh, somebody said Scorpio moon intimate make prophecy about the person. Interesting. Oh, and Emmy had said they don't share much. That is a really interesting interpretation because it is typically true of Scorpio. When we see that moon on the midheaven, they will there is the midheaven brings the moon out, the moon which is normally private, and Scorpio which is normally private, it does bring it out in a more public way. But we're going to find some really interesting things about this person, about things that are hidden. And so I'm looking forward to going on now. Somebody else says moon Jupiter conjunction people are also rich enough since it creates, and I'm not sure, this is obviously Indian astrology here, Gaj Kasari Yoga. And so I don't, and sorry, I apologize. I haven't studied Jyotish, so I'm afraid I'm not familiar with any of those things. It's okay. Thank you. Thank you for understanding. Um, but yeah, and it create obviously it creates a very positive energy for the person, which is good for money. So yeah, absolutely 100%. And that's a very good interpretation because that'll come up later too. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead forward and let's see what we've got next. Okay. A play full of characters. So the chart is an individual seen through the facets of multiple characters. The chart is full of contrasting qualities, characters that are competing with or supporting other characters. And this over here on the right is the frontispiece from an edition of Romeo and Juliet, an illustrated edition of Romeo and Juliet. And that is, we're going to be working with images from that play to help support and illustrate our story. And so here is the full cast. Uh, wandering around on these steps, and some are interacting and some are not, and so on and so forth. So even though this chart is full of these contrasting qualities, it still represents you as a complete, integrated individual. Looking at the chart as a play full of characters, some of whom we like and some we don't, gives us objectivity. It's a lot easier to see your chart when you can gain that objectivity and see these not as you are, you are, you are, you are, but this is a cast of characters that some other you is directing or interacting with. That lets us stand back from the chart and see it as an outsider. And this really helps a lot with understanding without taking it personally. Resolving the chart back into a single complete person is a more subjective experience as we start to integrate that unified whole. And you feel how those disparate parts melt into a unity of you. Just like the alchemical dictum solve et coagula, it is important to separate yourself into those parts, purify each one, and reform yourself as a perfect whole. This is the spiritual experience of the chart. Using our imagination with the chart to tell inspiring stories helps purify and perfect the parts to create that integrated whole. So here are the planets and the roles they play. And so I usually see the planets as a cast of characters, and I have a video and blog post and workbook. You can find it on my YouTube channel via the video itself or on my blog. Um, at joyvernon.com, and the blog post has the link to the video as well as to the workbook. It's called How to Learn Astrology with Only 17 Symbols, is what it's called. How to Learn Astrology with Only 17 Symbols. On my blog, you can just go into my blog, my website, hit the magnifying glass and look for 17 symbols, and you'll find it right away. But I talk about this idea of the dramatis personae idea for the planets there. But I do also see them as ideals and archetypes. I have various ways of describing each planet, and I allow the question asked or the planetary interactions to bring one or two primary meanings out. Here are a few examples I might use. The sun for me is going to be the hero, the protagonist. It's the core identity or the self. The moon is the emotional self, the mother, the intuitive, the comfort zone. Mercury is the communicator, the mind, the messenger. Venus is the lover, the aesthete, and the peacemaker. Loves things of beauty, loves to be beautiful, loves things of beauty. Mars is the fighter, the athlete, and the warrior. And you can see those two obviously are basically opposites of each other. Very interesting to explore their relationships and charts. Jupiter is the leader, teacher, the wise one, the priest, the generous authority. Saturn is the old man, the father, the strict authority. Uranus is a rebel, revolutionary, innovator, genius, and eccentric. Neptune, the escapist. It represents our brain fog and confusion. It's a mediator and it is our imagination. Pluto is the power monger. It's a control freak. It does represent transformation. Again, these are pretty basic keywords. So we'll kind of come back to these. They're just to get you started. And if you already have keywords, I think that's in the next slide, so I'll move forward. Tips for using and developing your keywords. I think the best thing to do is developing personal relationships with the planets. However, you can get in touch with each planet and start to understand who it is, why it is, what their backstory is, how they work, what they want. And you can develop these relationships with each planet through learning their myths and stories, I work a lot with the Orphic hymns. I think that's a great way to get to know the planets. Doing planetary magic, meditating on the planets or with the planets, observing how they show up in your everyday life. And that can be through transits. It's like, oh, I've got a Mars transit. Let's see what happens. Or simply by invitation and observation and just somebody told me in another class, it was a different class, but whenever she left the house each day, whatever our topic was, she would ask for that to show up in her life. So if you want to get to know Jupiter, you can leave the house and say, I would like to see how Jupiter works in my life today. And then just observe the things that happen and how it shows up. The keywords I list above are certainly not exhaustive. They don't even fully represent my take on the planets, but they're a basic starting place and they grow as the story grows. And again, we just want to get a bite onto the edge of the story so that we can start to go deeper with it. And so just enough to get you into the story and then let your imagination take over. I recommend that you work with the keywords that work best for you. Use your own keywords. You don't have to use mine. As to the keywords, there's a freedom that comes from simplicity. It's more important to morph basic understandings based on how the characters show up in the chart and the interactions they engage in than to have a long list of keywords that don't move you or play well with others. So aspects, the interactions. So now I'm going to talk about what the aspects are. An aspect is defined as a geometrical configuration between two planets, points, or other objects. It denotes a relationship or connection. They are indicated on a chart by colored connecting lines, such as the red and blue lines we look at in the figure on the right. And this is why I prefer that charts are done in color since we can. It's like a computer can print it out for you. It's easy enough to do this. The red lines are the challenging aspects or the hard aspects, and the blue lines are the easy aspects in astro.com, in AstroSeek, in Alab. Some other chart software, people can adjust it to whatever color they want. They might not adjust it that way. I like this because it's really easy to read. The red lines are the difficult aspects, the blue lines are the easy aspects, and boom, you don't need to know anything about astrology and you're already starting to follow those relationships. We'll look at a table of keywords for the aspects and then some dramatic images to help understand and interpret the aspects. And this is, again, part of the underlying premise that I'm building on is how to start to see these aspects not just as a geometric relationship, but as a human interaction between two personalities. So major aspects and their interactions. And so the conjunction, and that's this one, is can be either hard or soft. It's ruled by the sun, and its keywords alignment, identity, equation, and overpowering. It can either be face to face or back to back. I usually, when I'm thinking about a conjunction, I usually put my hands like this. This is a conjunction. It's completely entwined. A sextile is soft. It's ruled by Venus, so it's friendly and harmonious, and it's not too far away. It's about 60 degrees away. So the idea of holding hands, when you're walking down the street holding hands with somebody, it's not like you're like squeezed together. You're really comfortable, you're connected, but you're not like invading each other's space. A square is antagonistic, competitive. It can represent strong foundations, and it is locked horns. I think of this when you're trying to resolve something with somebody and neither person will budge. You're just kind of stuck. Locked horns is one of the ways that I usually look at that. The trine is a soft or easy aspect. It's ruled by Jupiter. It can be expansive and generous, and it's like a long pass in football. And if somebody's like, Joy, I thought you were in theater. Why are you talking about football? If you ever have seen Cat in the Hot Tin Roof or directed it like I have, you'll remember the monologue by Brick. And he talks about his relationship when he played professional football. He talks about his relationship with his receiver, Skipper. And he talks about those long, long, high passes. And it is one of the sexiest phrases in the whole play. It's just, there's so much memory and reminiscence and love of the sport and possibly of Skipper. That's the hidden part, the mendacity. So it's that long pass in football where you are that's trust and that's faith, right? You let that football go and you know that that person is going to catch it, you know, and make that connection so that you can score that touchdown, whatever you're going to do. I don't know anything about football, but there's a certain amount of faith there because typically, I believe, I watched football a few times because there's a period when the Denver Broncos were doing super well. And so I was watching when John Elway was there, and he was he had the worst problems with his receiver not catching his passes, which was a bit of a problem. Um, and uh, and so there's a certain trust that you're trying to send this football a certain place, and your receiver is trying to like get to that place to catch it. And so there has to be this interaction and this trust and this like inner kind of mind communication. So that to me is a nice expression of a trine. And then the opposition is pulling away or denying. That's a tug of war. One thing wants this, one thing wants the other, and it's really hard for them to, they're either at a total standstill and neither one is winning, or one gets its way and the other one falls in the mud puddle. So that's the tug of war for the opposition. So again, we really want to focus on interaction. So I pulled some production photos and some illustrations from Romeo and Juliet. Um, and the one on the left is William Hatherell, who I'm pretty sure it's him, and he did a illustrated in 1912 an illustrated edition of Romeo and Juliet, probably as a gift book, which was really common at the time. And so that's Romeo and Juliet on the balcony. And then in the middle, this is not Romeo and Juliet, as you're going, who the heck is that? This is actually Taming of the Shrew and what I believe is a gender role reversed uh, um, performance. And so I believe that's actually the woman is actually playing Petruchio, if I remember this correctly. Um, and I don't know if the man is playing Kate or what. But you can see again the idea that that conjunction can be hard or soft. It can be coming in together for a kiss, like Romeo and Juliet. And the third one, that is from a 2017 performance for the Stratford Festival. I believe in Stratford, Ontario. I'm not 100%. And the photography, it's in the credits at the end. It was Celia von Tiedemann or something like that. Um, so coming in for a kiss can be one approach to understanding that conjunction, but holding someone in a being that close to somebody to hold them in that kind of grip, as we have in the middle photo, that can be what a conjunction feels like as well. Sextile, and this is the holding hands one. And so all three images are taken from the dance where Romeo meets Juliet, and they do this dance where they touch hands like that, and they say that really sexy line about something like may lips do what hands do, and it's very very romantic and very much that energy of two people meeting and getting to know each other. Um, so there's kind of and a sextile is just that comfortable, a little bit of space, but a feeling of appreciation, of pleasure and enjoyment of being where you are and what you're doing. And the right-hand photo is from the Stratford Festival by Celia von whatever I said, Tiedemann or something. And the left one, I believe that is from a BBC production, and the photography was by a guy named Reg Wilson. Um, so the square, and this is when things are at odds with each other. This is that locked horns. And so I pulled both the Act One stuff when the all the young men are like starting to fight each other. The one on the left is that "Do you bite your thumb at me?" which is such a great line. And it's just like flipping somebody off or something. It's asking for trouble. And then there's also the Tybalt Mercutio. Um, exchange. And the one on the bottom right is my all-time favorite for to represent the square, and that is with the crossed swords. Um, so much it's just like nobody they're stuck. Nobody is winning at this point. Eventually Mercutio gets slain, and then Romeo slays Tybalt in vengeance. But at this point it's just like stuck and you can't move, and that's very much a square feeling. So the trine is that help from afar is how I see it. And so I found, and so both Friar Lawrence and the nurse are the helpers that are not really, they're not like, they're not directly involved, but they're external to the basic story and bringing in help from afar. And so, top left is when Romeo is like, oh, they're both such whiny teenagers, but he's like, oh, I can't live. I'm in love, and now I have to die or something. I don't know. He's gonna kill himself because he can't. I don't. It doesn't even make any sense. But he can't see Juliet, so he's gonna kill himself. And the nurse and Friar Lawrence are trying to help him out. And he was going to kill himself, but he's like scheduled to die or something. Something else is going on. I forget all the details, to be honest. I haven't seen it in a while. And but they modify that judgment that he has to die or has to and encourage him to kind of self-banish himself or something like that, if I remember correctly. I read the scene this morning or yesterday to try to remember it, and I still don't remember. The next one next to it is when the Juliet has sent the nurse off to find out if Romeo is interested in her or not. And they just have a really fun scene where the nurse is like, oh, I had to walk all the way over there and all the way back. I'm so tired. I don't have the energy to talk to you and tell you what he said. And they just play this little game. It's really cute. And the one on the bottom left is Juliet going to see Friar Lawrence, who gives her she's supposed to marry this guy named Paris. He's giving her this potion that will make her appear to be dead. And we know that all ends up in the tragedy that is Romeo and Juliet. But just the fact that all of these, there is such a distance between the characters. And the last one on the right, the Juliet is kneeling in front of Friar Lawrence, which still creates again a distance between them. And so, just this idea that this is help from afar, that's that trine relationship. So, understanding trines from this perspective, I think will give you a lot, that help from afar idea. Opposition, and obviously the the best scene in the play to represent this is when um, Juliet's father, Capulet, is just like, you know, really upset at her. She can't do this, she can't do that. No, nothing's allowed. She has to follow the rules. And this is that strict authority of Saturn. It's the opposition. There's a strong, because she's kneeling, and you can see in the middle one, that's actually in the speech. Good Father, I beseech you on my knees. So she is kneeling in the scene. Um, and trying to get him to listen to her. I like the one on the left the best, where the father looks like he's struck her, is about to strike her, but he's turned away and she's turned away from him. And there's the height difference because she's kneeling. So that really brings out that two diametrically opposed viewpoints that are not capable of resolution. My goal with teaching aspects like this is that it gets you to stop seeing them just as some kind of mathematical number, which they are, and that's very important, but to layer onto it a very profound interaction between two characters. And once you can start to see these character interactions when you look at an aspect, then your charts will come to life. And that's the basis of what I am trying to express today and why we spent a lot of time on that. So, telling the story, remember Aristotle, find the characters and the actions they take. And this one, in this illustration here, is Romeo asking the apothecary for poison to kill himself because he thinks Juliet's dead because Balthazar did not give him the message, or somebody didn't give him the message that he was supposed to get of from Friar Lawrence saying that Juliet is just in a coma or unconscious or whatever. And so Romeo's going to kill himself. And so he goes to see the apothecary, and there's the whole scene is about how poor the apothecary is, how skinny he is, how his apothecary shop is full of dusty things. Obviously, nobody comes in and buys anything anymore. And so Romeo's going to give him like 40 florins or something, which I don't know what that is, but it sounds like a lot. And so he's going to give him, a purse of money, so to speak, in order to get this poison. And the apothecary says it's death to me if I sell this to you. It's illegal to do this. And Romeo says, looks like it's death to you anyway because you're so poor and old and malnourished because he doesn't have any money and needs food. And Romeo says, just give me the poison and I'll give you this bag of money. And you can see the amount of decision making going on in the eyes of that apothecary there in the illustration. And he finally says, uh, my will says no, but my poverty says yes. Or so I don't remember the exact words, but my will says no, but my poverty says yes. And he sells the poison to Romeo. It's like he's just a very, very minor character, but this is a pivot point in the story. Will, like, I mean, Romeo's a young man and he's obviously showing a lot of a lot of emotional uh, confusion. I think he'd probably fall on his sword if he didn't have the poison, I think, but um, it's still a pivotal point where he's got somebody else that says, "Okay, you want to die? That's fine," or you want to kill somebody. The apothecary doesn't know what he wants the poison for. Um, So when I'm telling the story, I start with the character in question and I discover what other character they are interacting with. Here's Romeo. He's our hero. Maybe he's Mars. The apothecary is this probably a Saturn example because he is representing poverty and because he has the power of life and death in his hands. And how are they acting? Mars is giving something to Saturn, giving it some life when it didn't have any. But it's going to ultimately kill not only Romeo but Juliet as well. Um, so start to explore these characters and what is their interaction. And you can add as many symbols as you can, and that's why this story thing is great, is because you can do it as a brand new beginner, just working with the bare bones pieces of the puzzle. And the more advanced you are, the more you know, the more details you have to flesh out that story and create something really powerful. Um, I don't think I have to read all of this. I do sometimes make up voices. I admit that I do that. And sometimes a certain characterization sticks and it turns into a common interpretation for me. Saturn in the seventh house, I usually think as a bouncer that's keeping people out of the club. And I found that that works for a lot of people. A lot of people resonate to that when they have Saturn in the seventh. And some interpretations just like flit in and land for a certain client and just never come up again. Tips, I don't explain everything all at once. I wait until the right time to talk about it. And I think my I I don't know. I think a common mistake is that people want to explain everything. And and it's important to hold back. It's important to focus on the things that are relevant. And even if you end up not talking about things, there are things that will answer the question asked or address the topic under consideration. And you want to stick to those things and layer on your other characters as needed, but not all characters are in every scene. So you don't have to address everything at once. I do check in with clients periodically to see if I'm on track and to answer if I'm answering relevant questions. If I see something odd that doesn't seem right for the person sitting with me, I just might say, this is not what I see in you, but it's what the chart placement says, so let's explore it. And that really, instead of like trying to gloss over it or ignore it, that really opens up hidden aspects of the personality and lets people understand things that sometimes they don't even understand about themselves or that doesn't make sense to them about themselves. So that can be really powerful to be 100% honest and truthful to the chart itself. Focus on what's relevant, immediate, and helpful. And I do have a video of me doing an astrology reading on my services, uh, on the astrology page under services category, which the link is shown there. And this is that Eleanor, Brick something or other, and that is Rosamond and Celia. Um, that's another that's I think As You Like It. Not one I'm as familiar with, but the person in the front is a woman cross-dressing as a man in that play. And I like the stepping stones image for the tips section. So finding the story examples. We're going to get into some examples. I've got way more than we'll have time to go over. So we'll just do a couple probably. The first thing that we are looking at here is the one that we already talked about for the party metaphor, and that's June 13th, 1935, Capricorn rising. And we've also got a June 13th, 1935 with Sagittarius rising. And so I wanted to, and one of the things that I find that's useful is comparing similar charts because it really helps you fine tune your story. It helps you um, really use story to see the differences in the chart when the chart is basically so similar, but you can use your story to really pad out the differences. So we're going to go and focus on the Capricorn rising chart first. And so this has that moon, Jupiter moon conjunction on the MC, which we talked about a little bit. It's got that Jupiter moon up here, opposite, which is the red line, down to Uranus, and square over here to Venus. And so the red triangle part is called a T-square, but we're going to focus on the interactions, those two interacting together, opposite to this, and those two square to this, and this one square to this. So who are the characters? What's the story? So who wants to get started? So let's say, since we already talked about the moon and Jupiter a little bit being on the midheaven, which is public recognition. They are in the ninth house. They're in the ninth house in the Koch house system, but they are actually in the 11th house in whole signs. And not in the 10th house at all, but they are kind of close to the midheaven. So feel free to jump in and share your ideas. Okay, house ruler Mars. And so again, what's that story going on? So we've got a Mars influenced, a fighter influence on both the moon and Jupiter. They have a bit of a fighter energy to them. How would you interpret that? How does that start to make a story? The moon is the emotions, Jupiter is the leader, the generous authority, the wise one. They're staying in the fighter's house. Okay, okay. And that's true. I will tell you. Let's get and everybody jump in. Jump. Remember, this is using your imagination. This is one thing. One of the interesting things about natal astrology is that there's so many things in once you start working with transits and all the techniques that are out there, you really start, that's when you're mapping like all the big changes and chapters in a person's life transits, progressions, and all the plethora of techniques beyond that. And so all we're doing is talking about personality. And this is really hard because these things are not frequently not as well described, as clearly described in biographies online and stuff like that. And so we have to sometimes take a bit of a chance. And of course, when you're reading for a client, you can check and say, is this like you? But sometimes when we're working with these, we have to make do with making some assumptions. So feel free. I I really want to encourage you, and I know that this is not typical for the average astrology teacher. They're very like, you need to know all of this stuff. But I'm like, you don't know anything. Just lose everything that you know and just make a story out of it. So, so I've got a couple things. Okay. Maybe feeling like being vulnerable, especially if it's for work, feeling like they are being restricted or preventing their freedom to experience emotions in the comfort of their home. Nice, really nice interpretation. Okay, good. I see them avoiding any new ideas that they didn't think of and will make no compromises for the sake of harmony. I think not avoid it's I think for this person it's not so much avoiding new ideas but avoiding any ideas that they didn't think of. I think is right on the mark. So yeah, so we're starting to see a little and they're in the fighter's house. They're staying there in that willing to um I think they're willing to fight. These two characters, our emotions and our leadership, are willing to fight. Um, but they do get placed in the fighter's house, so to speak, a lot. What happens when we add that opposition, which is that tug of war, to Uranus, which is the eccentric, the innovator, and that's in Taurus. So we've got the innovator in Taurus opposite to our to our moon, Jupiter in Scorpio. What do you see there when we start to add this other character and watch that interaction? So it was the tug of war, or we had the three scenes of Juliet in an argument with her father, where she was on her knees and he was yelling at her, pointing like he was sending her away, like he was gonna hit her, or something like that. How does innovation work with this person's emotions? Is this too hard or too easy or too confusing or why the quietness? Or am I just not seeing, are people posting and I'm not seeing it? Thinking, okay. That's allowed. And so sometimes, okay, good. Feel that someone wants to take their job. Interesting, interesting. Yeah, and we're kind of seeing that's very true in some surprising ways. Um, a lot of times I'll just say I'll just start talking like, well, so what we've got is your innovation is at odds with your emotions and also your wisdom. And then I'll say, but you strike me as an innovative person. So I'm not saying you're not innovative, that it's one or the other. Um, uh, it's more like the innovation is somehow just like Juliet's father, every time you're trying to be innovative, somebody's trying to slap you down. I might start now, of course, I know who this is, so I don't want to talk too much, but I want to tell you my process and how that might unfold in a conversation with a client. Does that help? Maybe they feel safer with tradition. Sorry, I'm really new to astrology, so I think you need to learn more. Have a really good comments on this part. And and I understand that, but I'm also going to challenge you because that's my job, is to say it doesn't matter. You can do this from the beginning because you are literally telling a story, and all you have to do is tell a story about an innovator that is in opposition to or having a tug of war with somebody's emotions and their and their leadership or their wisdom. And so just start making a little story, make a two-sentence story about that. You don't have to know anything about astrology. Just make a two-sentence story about the innovator that is in a tug of war with uh, an emotional, the emotions combined with that leadership wisdom. They may not trust their innovative ideas. Okay, okay. So let's add, and you guys are, I think a lot of what you're saying is true. I think this person is able to overcome some of those things. And so let's add that Venus in too. They always need to be in control, and innovation can be scary. Okay. Let's add the Venus in. So Venus is love, pleasure, enjoyment. It's the Venus stuck in the middle, acting as a mediator or trying to smooth things over. Good, good, good. Oh, hi, Elizabeth. Um, so now we've got the lover, the peacemaker in there. Um, and the peacemaker is kind of butting horns, locking horns, butting heads or locking horns with the emotions on one side and the innovation on the other side. And remember, this is something also very important. When we're reading for like your average person that walks in off the street, they've got chances are pretty ordinary life. When I pull charts for a presentation, I'm going to try to find somebody that you've heard of, hopefully, so that and but as a result, whenever we pull charts that people have heard of, we've automatically chosen somebody that has been successful. So this is just a trick. When you're reading for a client, you'll be a little bit more you might be used to being, let me say it that way, you might be used to being more modest in your interpretations. When you're looking at sample charts in a astrology class, this is going to be somebody that's really succeeded enough that you will know their name. And so you'll want to have the appropriate interpretations. Now, one of the things you can do for your clients is even if you find that they resonate the best with kind of medium interpretations, you can explore big interpretations with them and say, what if this problem, this obvious problem, got resolved? Then what would it look like? So I think a couple more comments came in. Hopefully this is useful. Yes, or infamous, absolutely. Fluctuations in emotional security pushes to balance emotional depth with practical freedom. Nice, nice, nice. Evolve beyond traditional limits, need to learn good adaptation skills. Very interesting. Yes, 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 yes. Yes, yes, yes. Love triangle between the sweet lover and the wild revolutionary and our pair. Okay, good. Um, when he struggles between stability and innovation, he needs to look for which or both will bring more beauty. Oh, yes. Yes, yes, yes. When he struggles with between stability and innovation, he needs to look for which will bring more beauty. 100%. I'm going to stop there because we're getting some really good interpretations, and I want to show you, I want to go on to the next chart. Okay, so this person is actually the first person's wife. And they were born on the same date in different countries and managed to meet at a party, interestingly, and worked together ever since. Now, this person is very different. The moon Jupiter conjunction is over oh, and by the way, I'm trying to keep things simple, but the first chart was a night chart. And so the luminary of sect was the moon, which gives the moon an extra emphasis. Plus, it was on the heaven. Plus, it was conjunct Jupiter. So all of that stuff, really strong moon. In this, we've got a day chart. So the moon is less important. It's still conjunct Jupiter, but it's stuck in the 12th house. which is a house of hidden things. Um, but we have Neptune on the midheaven in Virgo. So we're going to talk about Neptune on the midheaven. Neptune is opposite. Again, we get to explore that opposition, the tug of war or Capulet kind of threatening Juliet. Um, and then that Jupiter moon, this is another interesting thing being born same day, different countries. Um, the Now, this is astro.com. They use really wide orbs, but there is enough of a difference that it moves Mercury forward a little bit and moves the moon back a little bit so that they're now within this wide orb. This grand trine in water was not there in the previous one because it was out of orb by a few minutes. And just those few minutes difference moved Mercury into orb. So this person, the wife, has this grand trine with Mercury, that moon Jupiter, Mercury in Cancer, moon Jupiter in Scorpio, and Saturn in Pisces. So we've got that also going on. So let's start with the basics. So we're just going to talk about Neptune. Neptune is confusion, imagination, it's or escapist ability, and that is conjunct the midheaven, which is how people recognize you, what you're recognized for, how you're respected. So what do we start with when this imagination, escapism uh, shows up there on the midheaven? A dreamer. Yes, a dreamer. Yeah. Actress, artist, artist. Good call. Good call. Very nice. And so now we take that artist dreamer and we put that in that opposition, that tug of war with Saturn. Fighting limitations. Okay, good. And so good. That's very good, Emmy. And so let's add something very interesting. The dreamer is in the sign of Virgo, which is about detail, being detail oriented. And the limitations of Saturn, which Saturn is the old man or the strict authority, that's in the sign of Pisces, which is very imaginative. Um, it's basically a Neptune sign. And Saturn is boundaries, and Pisces is the boundless. So now we've got that Saturn in the boundary maker in the boundless ocean, and we've got the dreamer in the very practical, detail-oriented Virgo. What happens when you start to put that together? They're fighting limitations 100%, but now we've got a lot more details that we can add in to round that out. I've got creativity against restrictions, which I really like. And then we have the fights limitations, which I already mentioned. Has to figure out how to make their dreams a reality, practical art. Yes. Can see the details, but not the whole picture. Yes. Um, are the limitations they're fighting self-imposed? That's a great question to ask the person that you're doing the reading for, but I also, again, my job is to challenge you. And so I would challenge you to see if that answer is in that chart. And I will literally do that with a client sitting there. I will say, well, I'm wondering if your limitations are self-imposed. And so I'm looking to see how your sun is working with this, how your moon is working with this, and try to figure out if those limitations, and then how like Jupiter and Saturn can be authority figures, how those things are interacting with this. So so the answer are the limitations are fighting self-imposed. We've got the sun, which is going to be the self, that's square to the to that imagination. The moon and the generous authority are in harmony, blue line, with that, but the strict authority is antagonistic to that. So I would say that there might be some self-imposed limitations, although if we note that the sun is in the seventh, we also might note that possibly the partner is putting in some limitations, and the strict authority looks like it's putting in limitations. So, and you can talk yourself through an interpretation in a client meeting. They're interested to know how you think about this and why you're coming to the conclusions that you're coming to. And then you can, after you come up with it, you can say, what do you think? Is that right? Something like that, and hear what they have to say. Ooh, okay. Need to get real and surrender at the same time. Yes. Need to build flexible structures to thrive. You are going to love it when you hear who this is. Moon in the 12th, something about their feelings might be invisible to them. Yes, 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 yes. And so, who are they supporting if their feelings are invisible to them? Okay, they are supporting the mental Mercury, which is the ruler of the midheaven. Certainly that makes good sense. Or the sun. The sun's in the seventh house of partnership, and people with sun in the seventh usually are, I think, uh, Stephen Forrest uses that as an example in one of his books, like for John Lennon, that he was very much in partnership with people. Never he was not very much about himself. He was very much about the partnerships he had, whether with Paul McCartney or with, I think he was doing John Lennon or with Yoko Ono or whoever. So, yeah, Sun in the seventh definitely is going to be a strong focus on the partner. And so, yeah, you guys did an amazing job turning to their emotions. Turning to their emotions helps them surrender to the vision and how to work within limitations. Nice. Surrender to the vision and work within the limitations. Nice, nice, nice. I like that. I like that. Okay, and somebody says it's part of their healing. Yeah, with Chiron in there, absolutely. Nice. Okay, I'm gonna go on. You guys ready to hear who it is? Christo and Jean-Claude. And so Christo was born, they were both born on the same day, same day. Christo was born in Bulgaria, and Jean-Claude was born in Morocco. And they are respectively an A and a double A rating on the Rodden scale. So Christo, if you've heard of him, it's when he wrapped the Reichstag in fabric. And so somebody said that something about things being hidden or his emotions being hidden, but also it was on the mid because he has the moon, Jupiter on the midheaven. It's like he literally takes big things like the Reichstag and hides them. And he did the same with a bridge in Paris and some other. See, he's done a lot of these large environmental art pieces. And before 1994, he was just known by his own name, even though he and she worked together on all of their things. Um, but after 1994, they retroactively realized that they were both doing this. It was a group effort. And so all the art that was made that was originally attributed to Christo alone became attributed to Christo and Jean-Claude. And you can see that she was in the background. Moon, Jupiter in the 12th. She wasn't even allowed to have her name on these things, and she just ended up being a little bit more almost administrative with that imagination in Virgo. I'm almost wondering if she was the one that they had to deal with a lot of licenses and getting permissions to do things. So that's that outside authority that's constantly putting the limitations in. And you can say that Christo has no limitations. He's like, I think I'll wrap the Reichstag in fabric. And it's never like Well, that seems like not a very good idea and a lot of expense, and but it looked really cool. So, their work was typically large, visually impressive, controversial, and that there's that moon, Jupiter on the midheaven, right? Large, visually impressive, and the opposition to uh, was his opposition to Saturn or to Uranus. His it was to Uranus. Um, Controversial, often taking years and sometimes decades of careful preparation, including technical solutions, political negotiation, permitting, and environmental approval, hearings, public persuasion. They had a lot of things that they wanted to do rejected, and they'd have to put together, like, plan all the details only to have it rejected. And they said that there was no meaning to their work, that it was there for joy, beauty, and new ways of seeing the familiar. And so I think we can really, really see the way. And now you imagine him at a party, right? He's going to the party to probably make some contacts and talk to somebody about, try to persuade them to do his artwork. He is going to be really fun and easy to get to know. They both are with that Gemini sun and very talkative and out social butterfly. And then when the that party gets going, he's probably going to take center stage. Everybody's going to be tuned into what he's saying, and he's probably going to tell them amazing stories of the work that he's done. And so there's that moon Jupiter on the midheaven. Um, so let me see. I think another chat came in. Um, Surrounding islands in pink fabric. Yeah, getting permits. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, a lot of that. But you can see all those things you guys were saying about it. Somebody even figured out that she was an artist at least. And and just all of those things that she seems like she's a little bit more supporting him. Yes, that she is a little bit, probably a little bit more engaged in the permitting and stuff with that Virgo midheaven. And he's very, very innovative and not, because he kind of did the same thing. Like, it was very innovative, but then once he wrapped the Reichstag in fabric, he just wrapped the bridge in fabric. He wrapped the islands in fabric. He just kept wrapping things in fabric. And it's kind of like, well, you could come up with a few more ideas. He did some cool thing, I think, with umbrellas or something. But he was very fabric based. Any other thoughts on this couple? Or their charts, and using this kind of story thing to not just go planet by planet, but to start to take one character and add other characters in and then explore the interactions. Any thoughts on that? Yeah, it really is interesting to see this practically the same charts, but turn just a little bit from Capricorn rising to that Sag rising. Yeah. And such a difference it made. Like, huge difference. And if you weren't approaching it, if you were approaching it from a strict, this planet and this sign in this house, I don't know that you would really find, I don't know, I maybe shouldn't be quite so negative, but I don't think you would find nearly the amount of interesting story that we found. I think I need to sit with it, perhaps try it on myself and get a firmer grasp. Okay, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Conclusion. To find the story, start with the characters, the planets, and define their interactions, which are the aspects. When you approach this chart from a story point of view, you gain the opportunity to use your imagination, which helps open your intuition. And remember what I said at the beginning, that somehow with somebody, I just imagined what they would bring to a party with Taurus rising, and I came up with an expensive bottle of wine. I don't know, why did I say that instead of a hostess gift? I have no idea why I said that. And she was like, "Oh my God, I always do that." So imagination really starts to open things up for you. by grounding the chart in what is or the explanation of the present, but also looking in the kind of the reality of the situation. And this is what I said, people that come in to see you are just going to have everyday problems. But also looking at the chart as the full potential of the person, as if they were a rock star, as if they were a world-renowned artist. You can help them shift into their best self because we saw some problems in Christo's chart. And did he have problems? He absolutely did. It was such a hassle to do all those things and all those permits and those external authorities and people saying, "Why are you doing this? It doesn't make any sense." But he overcame all of those to be extremely successful. And incidentally, he didn't ever take any grants for his work. He funded all of his big work from selling art. So, so he funded everything himself, which is really interesting. We didn't look at that part of the story. We didn't look at money, but it is an interesting thing. Um, at the same time, times of difficulty and challenge are easier to approach from a story perspective, which offers objectivity. And instead of being, you are having a hard time, you are, in your Saturn return or your Uranus opposition or something like, "Ah," or Pluto's going through your 10th house. "Ah." It's like instead of saying you are, let's just open up this story that talks about how these characters are engaging each other. And I hope you play many great roles in your life. So there are the Brickdale. Eleanor Fortescue Brickdale was the woman, and then the William Hatherell was the other one that I used, mostly his images, and the Romeo and Juliet set in costumes from the Stratford Festival Theater, 2017. Production photography was by Siliv and Tiedemann. Um, and so those were the ones that I used the most. Um, and then thank you for attending How to Find the Story in the Chart. You can find me at joyvernon.com, and I have a blog there. You can also get to it via completelyjoyous.com. Follow all of our great events at the Greater Seattle Astrology Tarot Reiki Meetup. And of course, you can subscribe to Joy Vernon Astrology Tarot Reiki on YouTube as well. So thank you everyone for attending.